As some of you know, I sometimes do reviews of video games that I just post for my Facebook profile and whatnot. And I was asked to do Ghost Recon Wildlands. I plan on doing it, but apparently I was being a bit too slow. So, anyways, what is Ghost Recon Wildlands? Well, as the name implies, it is an entry in the Ghost Recon franchise. It's done by Ubisoft, and from what I remember, Ubisoft has been doing the Tom Clancy games for a long time. I'm not sure if anyone else does them, but I don't think anyone else makes the Tom Clancy games. Anyway, so what are some changes between this Ghost Recon and the last one? Well, the tech isn't as the tech isn't near as futuristic. It does reference things that happened in the last game, so it's not like the whole storyline from the last game is completely gone. It's just the tech in there isn't near as futuristic, which I kind of like. Yes, you still have things done for the purpose of it being a video game, like the drones that you fly around. Those are pretty futuristic. As far as being able to mark enemies with them and switching between different modes of vision with that drone and calling your drone back to you and whatnot. It's got a co-op campaign. From what I remember, none of the others had a co-op campaign. They did have technically some co-op you could play, but that was in PvP. Speaking of which, there is no PvP in this one, as far as I have seen. They might make some PvP later, but I haven't seen any news to say they will or to say that they won't. Another big change that was one of the main selling points of this one was that it's a non-linear campaign. You don't have the scripted Call of Duty style campaign that the last one had. So, in the last one, they tried to say, well, you can do these missions however you want, which wasn't really true. You had scripted routes that you had to follow throughout the mission. There were scripted moments in those missions, whereas in this, it's more of they built this open world with these different enemies in it, and then they just let you loose on it. There are missions where once you get a target and you take him back to your base, it has a little cinematic clip of you and the CIA agent talking to him, but there's not really any moment where it felt like, oh, I have to do this because the story wants me to do this. I never felt like that at all in this game. The map is huge. If you just walked across it and drove across it, it would be bigger than Skyrim. It would be bigger than Fallout 4. As far as the area you can move around in, I think it's the biggest map yet. Well, it might be a little bit smaller than The Witcher 3, but I have been flying the helicopters a little bit more in this game, so... Anyways, there are a lot of weapons available. Most of them are locked until you find them in the game. There's weapons cases and there's weapons attachment cases that you can find that let you have new weapons and even new parts for weapons that you already have. There's a lot of customization for your weapons, and I feel like, well, comparing it to other games that say you have weapons customization. So, Fallout 4. Fallout 4's weapon customization was touted as this, you make your guns however you want to play. I found that wasn't really the case. With Fallout 4, you basically wanted to go straight to the bottom of the list in your weapons customization, and that's where all the powerful stuff was, and you only want to use that. Whereas in this game, you can really build your weapons however you want. No, you're not building weapons from scratch, but I mean, so take an AK or take an M4. You can put different suppressors on it. You can put different things that go on rails that you attach to it. You can put different sights on it. You can change the magazine size. You can change the buttstock on it. It's pretty interesting. As far as weapons go, one thing that I like is that there's bullet drop in this. I guess maybe that's because of how big the map is. But you don't really notice bullet drop in games anymore unless it's a game specifically made about sniping, like Sniper Elite or something like that. In this, bullet drop is a very real thing. It presents a pretty good challenge to sniping. It's not a thing of your bullet shoots like a laser across the map. You have to... It really helps to find scopes with little marks on them. I don't know whether the marks are actually meant to help you aim or if they're just there for aesthetics, but I found that it helped me judge distance and what mark I needed to put the enemy on as far as just putting him in the center of the scope. You can upgrade your character. I like the character upgrade system a lot more than Far Cry's or the Divisions. You upgrade yourself. You can upgrade different items that you have. You can get new items through the upgrades. Like you start off with 2 frag grenades, and those are the only explosives you have. But through upgrading your character, you can get access to things like C4, mines, lures, flares you can shoot, and then you can upgrade how many of those things that you can carry. You can upgrade your drone to have different modes of vision. You can upgrade its battery life, its signal strength, things like that. You can also upgrade your AI squad with bullet resistance and how smart they are. But you can also get abilities from the rebels by doing missions, little side missions for the rebels. I call them side missions, but there's not really any main missions, so just doing missions for the rebels, I guess. You can unlock things like calling in for mortar support. You can get them to drop off vehicles. You can call in for rebel soldiers to come in and help you. As far as when you play single player, your AI squad is pretty useless. They're not as bad as the JTF was in the Division, but not near as good as some other games have with AI companions or squad, so to speak. On that note, it is best played with friends. Like with a lot of large open world cooperative games, this game was made to play with your friends. Excuse me. When I played it by myself, I felt like I was actually playing by myself. The AI squad didn't really contribute anything, whereas when I'm playing with even just one other person, whereas your AI squad is 3 strong, when you play with one other person, it opens up a lot of different options as far as going into a base and taking out convoys and whatnot, and that increases with the amount of people that you are playing with. You can play with up to 3 other people, and the more people, the better. There's so many different things you can do. You can insert by helicopter into an area and drop people off at different locations so that you have different angles of approaching the base. It's nice to have people able to give you some firepower when you're flying a helicopter as opposed to just being an air transport. The flight controls are pretty difficult at first to get used to. It does take time of just finding a helicopter and just trying to fly around to get practice on it. I'm still not very good with the airplanes in there. I don't know. I feel like they could have done a lot better on the flight controls for both the helicopters and the airplanes. The driving controls seem pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Just right trigger for gas, left trigger for brake, X for handbrake. That's about it as far as driving goes. There is very slow progression with loot at first. unless you have a friend that's already used to flying a helicopter and can take you from place to place to get weapons and weapons attachment. At first, I saw that as a very big problem for me. However, once you zoom out and look at the map, it's a huge place to explore. They expect you to take a long time to get through this game. And so I understand why the loot system feels like how it does. Another thing with that, having the very large map, it is both fun and not so fun at times. It's fun in that there's huge differences in terrain. There's areas that look like it's in Utah, with it being very deserty, large mountains, there's canyons and whatnot. Another part that felt a lot like Utah is the salt flats in that area. Just this huge, we thought it, when me and my friends first got there, we thought it was a huge body of water, but we found that you were able to walk on it and whatnot. It's just a huge, flat, white area. It looks like something out of Mad Max. It's pretty cool. And it reminds me of the salt flats we have out here in Utah, where a lot of people take souped up cars and try to break speed records for land vehicles. You have forests, you have marshes, you have high mountains with snow on it. Basically any type of terrain you can imagine. Well, except for, I guess, beaches and whatnot. I haven't seen any beaches in this. So it's good in that you can have all these different environments in the same game, and there is no loading screen when you're traveling. It's a seamless transition from place to place. And I know a lot of games try to say, oh, we have seamless transitions, there's no loading screens, and then inevitably you end up running into a wall of loading screens. The only loading screens I have seen in this game were if you die and you respawn, you have a loading screen there, or when you fast travel. Those are the only loading screens I've seen in this game. Another problem with having a large map is that if you aren't very good at flying, then it takes a while to get anywhere. With how the roads are and how the terrain works. So let's say that you have 1 kilometer to move. If you're in a helicopter, it doesn't matter what the terrain's like. It takes about the same amount of time to travel 1 kilometer anywhere. But if you're in a car, that 1 kilometer could mean about 30 seconds. It could mean 5 minutes, just depending on how the terrain is. It could be up at the top of a mountain where there's a huge winding road and there's no way that you can go off of the road to try to get there faster. And then in the salt flats area for vehicles, 1 kilometer takes about 30 seconds to travel no matter where, because there's no obstacles, nothing to get in the way. But I do like that aspect of it. It makes me try to think outside the box as far as how am I going to get here, what can I do. So yeah, that's Ghost Recon Wildlands. Do I think it's worth paying $60 right off the bat? Yes, I do. With the amount of content, well, with the amount of time you can spend in the game, with how many different missions they give you and whatnot, I think it's well worth $60. If you didn't like how Far Cry did going into a base and trying to take out the base, there's a lot of that in Ghost Recon Wildlands. There's quite a bit of it in there. One complaint that people had in Far Cry was the constant, well, with Ubisoft games in general, was the constant finding a tower, get to the top of the tower, and that reveals a large part of the map. There is none of that in here. The way you discover new parts of the map is by either just going there and finding it for yourself or finding pieces of intel around. And it's not done to where it's just a movement challenge. There, a lot of the times getting intel is invading a base and getting that intel that way. I do like the cover system in The Division quite a bit more, with how it worked with you getting in and out of cover. To me, it feels like cover is just there for you to stand behind and not really for you to hide behind. I don't know if that makes any sense, but so in Call of Duty style games, the cover that's there, all that you do is you go behind it and crouch behind it and make yourself as small as possible. That's how the cover is in here. Whereas in the Division, with the cover, you run up to the cover and you press a button, and your guy hides himself behind that cover. You can move along that cover, I found, pretty easily. Whereas in here, the cover didn't work near as well as I thought it would. I did find some problems with the game switching which shoulder you were aiming over. For me, it threw me off quite a bit because I personally shoot with my right hand, and so I like having the view behind the right shoulder. Whereas a lot of the times in the game where you just walk around a corner and the game automatically switches which shoulder it's going behind, it throws me off quite a bit. Some people might like the view behind the left shoulder and whatnot. All you have to do is tap right bumper and it switches your shoulder back and forth, but I didn't care for it constantly switching for me. But anyway, that's the end of my review.